Rising tensions in the Strait of Hormuz have triggered fresh fears of a wider regional confrontation after reports emerged that several Iranian oil tankers may have breached parts of the U.S. naval blockade in the Gulf. According to maritime monitoring reports, 3 empty supertankers linked to Iran's National Iranian Tanker Company were allegedly able to move through routes near Pakistan's exclusive economic zone before turning toward Iranian waters. Analysts say the maneuver suggested an attempt to avoid heavily monitored Gulf corridors controlled by the United States and allied naval forces. The vessels, capable of carrying millions of barrels of crude oil once loaded, were reportedly detected over the past 2 days. Satellite tracking data and AIS signals appeared to confirm the movement of at least 2 of the tankers, while another vessel, identified as Hasna, was reportedly located hundreds of nautical miles west of the primary U.S. interception zone. However, independent visual confirmation of the 3rd vessel remained unavailable at the time of reporting. American military officials later presented a sharply different version of events. According to the U.S. Central Command, American naval forces attempted to stop the tanker Hasna on May 6 after repeated warnings allegedly went unanswered. CENTCOM stated that an FA-18 Super Hornet launched from the USS Abraham Lincoln fired 20mm cannon rounds that disabled the vessel's rudder, preventing it from continuing toward Iran. While Washington claimed the operation successfully halted the tanker, questions remain because no independently verified footage or satellite imagery has yet confirmed visible damage to the ship. At the same time, reports suggested at least 2 additional Iranian tankers may have continued moving toward Iranian waters despite the blockade effort. If confirmed, analysts say the incident could indicate that Tehran is adapting its maritime strategies to circumvent growing American pressure. In the Gulf, the developments unfolded against the backdrop of an increasingly volatile standoff between Iran and the United States in one of the world's most strategically important waterways. The Strait of Hormuz remains critical to global energy markets, with a substantial percentage of the world's oil shipments passing through the narrow maritime corridor every day. The confrontation escalated further after Iranian state media claimed Iranian military forces had driven American warships away from the Strait of Hormuz following an alleged U.S. strike on an Iranian oil tanker. Iranian officials asserted that missile batteries and naval units responded immediately after what they described as American aggression against Iranian shipping. According to Iranian media, U.S. naval assets operating near Hormuz came under missile fire and were forced to retreat after sustaining damage. Iranian commanders portrayed the episode as evidence that Tehran was prepared to respond militarily and direct to any attack on its maritime assets. Officials in Tehran warned that any future military action near Iranian territorial waters or shipping lanes would result in severe consequences for American forces operating in the region. Political leaders inside Iran also intensified their rhetoric. Senior Iranian lawmakers accused Washington of violating a fragile ceasefire arrangement and warned that any missile strike or military attack on Iranian territory would be treated as a direct American crime requiring retaliation against U.S. bases and military assets across the Middle East. Washington, however, strongly rejected Tehran's version of events. U.S. Central Command insisted that Iranian forces had launched unprovoked attacks involving missiles, drones, and fast-moving boats against American destroyers operating in the Strait of Hormuz. American officials said U.S. forces responded with what they described as defensive strikes against Iranian missile launch facilities, surveillance sites, and military infrastructure. CENTCOM further stated that no American ships or personnel were hit during the confrontation. Despite the competing narratives, the exchange underscored how rapidly tensions in the Gulf have intensified in recent weeks. The current confrontation follows the launch of Project Freedom, a U.S.-led naval initiative aimed at escorting commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz after regional instability disrupted shipping routes earlier this year. Under the operation, American warships and aircraft have been tasked with securing shipping lanes and enforcing restrictions targeting Iranian oil exports. The blockade effort has reportedly trapped dozens of vessels and sharply reduced maritime traffic through the strait. Analysts warn that any sustained disruption in the area could have immediate consequences for global oil markets and energy prices worldwide. Fresh reports of explosions near Iran's southern coastline have further heightened concerns about a broad. The regional escalation, Iranian media said blasts were heard near Bandar Abbas and Kish Island, locations considered highly sensitive because of their proximity to Iranian naval and military operations in the Gulf. An American official later confirmed to U.S. media outlets that American forces had carried out strikes on Bandar Abbas and Qasem Island, though Washington emphasized the operations did not represent a formal resumption of full-scale war. Confusion quickly spread across regional media regarding responsibility for the explosions. Some reports cited unnamed Israeli sources denying any Israeli involvement, while other unverified claims suggested aircraft from the United Arab Emirates may have targeted Iranian positions. Iranian authorities said investigations into the incidents were continuing and cautioned against speculation before official findings were released. Meanwhile, Tehran again accused American forces of attacking Iranian shipping and claimed Iranian missiles had tar. Get enemy naval units operating in the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials maintained that opposing forces sustained damage and withdrew from the area after the missile strikes. The broader regional crisis has also expanded beyond Iran and the United States. The United Arab Emirates reported that missile and drone attacks targeted areas near Fujairah for a second consecutive day, including zones close to one of the UAE's major oil export terminals. Iran denied responsibility for the attacks. Iranian military officials insisted that no missile or drone operations had been conducted against the UAE in recent days and argued that Tehran would openly acknowledge any direct military action if it had occurred. The armed forces of the Islamic Republic of Iran have not conducted any missile or drone-based military operations against the United Arab Emirates at any point during these recent days, Iranian military officials said. They further added, had any such hostile action taken place, we would have certainly come forward to announce it in a firm and explicit manner. Iranian officials also issued a warning to regional governments, declaring that any hostile activity launched from neighboring territory against Iranian islands, ports, or coastal infrastructure would provoke a severe response. We issue a stern warning that should any hostile action be initiated from within the territory of the UAE against our Iranian islands or against the ports and coastal regions of our nation, we will deliver a truly crushing and deeply regrettable response. Iranian officials said the mounting confrontation has left diplomats and security analysts increasingly worried that the fragile ceasefire between Washington and Tehran may be close to collapse. Both countries continue accusing each other of initiating military aggression while simultaneously claiming to be acting defensively. President Donald Trump has maintained that the ceasefire technically remains in place despite the rebid. Sent clashes. However, military deployments across the Gulf continue to expand, and naval forces from multiple countries remain on heightened alert around the Strait of Hormuz. International observers warn that any further exchange of fire in the region could rapidly destabilize global shipping routes and energy markets. With commercial vessels, military warships, and missile systems all operating within a narrow maritime corridor, the risk of miscalculation remains extremely high. Analysts say even a limited confrontation could disrupt oil supplies and trigger broader economic consequences across international markets within hours.